Hello and welcome to the channel. This is Slow Road the Pro here, and today we're going to be rebuilding a 1998 Honda Cr125 HPP power valve cylinder. And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe and ring that bell to get you more of these types of videos. To start this, you're going to need some super white lithium grease along with a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 4mm Allen key, and 8mm wrench. First things first, no matter whatever you do, don't forget the first bolt you want to put in here is this stupid drain bolt that does absolutely nothing, so go ahead and toss that in there. Along with that, you're also going to need a bottle of HP2 2-stroke oil or any 2-stroke oil of your choice. I use HP2, and I also like to put it inside of this little bottle. That way it's easier to put inside and on stuff without accidentally pouring half the bottle on your hand. So you're going to have several parts to your cylinder. You have your power valve flaps, your power valves themselves, your washer stack, your bolts, your pivot arms, your main shaft, and then the gear that goes on that main shaft. And now it's important to note that this gear that goes in the end of the shaft is actually the same whether you flip it both directions. I like to look on the little imprint on the inside of the gear and match that up with the race on the bearing inside of your cylinder so that it's the same as it was whenever you took it out of the bike. So we're going to go ahead and grab the cylinder here, and we're going to use super white lithium grease to go ahead and lube up all of the parts that are not the power valves themselves, and we're going to anti-seize these bolts. Get yourself some anti-seize lubricant. Now we're going to use our super white lithium grease, and we're going to go ahead and lube up our pivot arms, our main shaft, and our gears. You can't really have too much grease on them. It's going to go away over time, so go ahead and pack those up pretty good. Always lube your shaft nicely. You don't want a dry shaft. You can grease these parts as you're putting them in the bike. I greased it prior to doing it just to make it easier. And you're going to go ahead and take some super white lithium grease and lube where your pivot arms are going to sit so there's no metal on metal contact. This bearing right here, whenever we washed the cylinder off in the parts washer and then cleaned it with soap water, which works really good and it's a cheap, easy way of doing so, it puts water inside of the bearing. And you're going to see that the inside of this bearing is not sealed. So you're going to want to take some 2-stroke oil and just drip it on down into there and roll the bearing around to make sure it's good and lubed and you don't have to worry about any rust happening in your bearing. Any kind of friction inside of that bearing is going to slow down your power valve, and a slow power valve is not good because you want as much power as you possibly can out of these 125 engines. We're going to go ahead and place the cylinder in this direction. It's kind of the easiest way to put your parts in, and you're going to note that you're going to want to put the power valve in so that the radius on the power valve matches the radius on the cylinder. You're going to put the power valve in so this little slot is faced towards the top of the cylinder, and you're going to lube that up with some 2-stroke oil. And then we're going to use the washer with the step in it. You're going to make sure that the washer with the step, whenever it is inside of the slot in your power valve holder, that it is flush with the power valve. As long as you have that correct, you're good to go. And then slide it into your engine. There's only one way to put it in while the slot is going to line up with where your washer is going to sit. If it's upside down, your power valve is not going to be seated correctly. Don't forget your washer on top, and then go ahead and slap your bolt in there after putting a little bit of anti-seize on. If you want to use Loctite, you can. I don't like dealing with taking it out, especially when I'm rebuilding it every 5 to 10, maybe 20 hours. And so we just go ahead and use anti-seize so that everything stays nice and lubed. And we're going to screw that in by hand real quick and then snug that down. Now you're going to grab your internal power valve itself, lube that up nice and good with some 2-stroke oil, and then slide that inside of your power valve holder. While you're sliding it in, go ahead and take your pivot arm, put it inside the slot of your power valve and slide them in together, and then seat your pivot arm inside of the pivot arm holder of the cylinder. Now we can go ahead and take our top clamp and put that on. Note that there is a slot in the back of the clamp that lines up with a piece on your pivot arm itself, so you can't really put that in backwards as long as the threads are facing the back of the cylinder. We're going to go ahead and grab our 4mm bolt and lightly put that in there. We do not want to tighten this yet. That's going to be part of the last process whenever we set the power valve. At this point, we can go ahead and grab our gasket, put it on top of our top piece, and put it onto our cylinder. We're also going to want to use a little bit of super white lithium on the top surface of this holder, just to make sure again that there's no metal on metal contact. And I seize these bolts a little bit and then go ahead and screw them into the top of your cylinder. And right now we're just going to make them lightly hand tightened. We can tighten them at this point, but we just do that at the end. That should be moving nice and easily inside of your cylinder. And as long as it is, you're good to move on to your next step. Grab your main shaft and go ahead and slide that down into your cylinder. We started on the HPP side of the cylinder just to make it a little bit easier whenever you go ahead and put the shaft in before you put the second gear on. So at this point you can repeat the process that you did on the first side. Lube up your power valve flap with 2-stroke oil, put it in with your washer, put your bolts in with anti-seize, and then go ahead and put your main power valve itself in and the pivot arm. Go ahead and install your top clamp and then install the power valve top piece just like you did on the opposite side, using super white lithium on the top piece where it rides so that you don't have metal on metal friction yet once again. Go ahead and leave this bolt loose as well. In this video, we are going to set the power valve off of the engine itself. Now, you can set the power valve on the engine. It might be easier for you, especially a first-time builder of this kind of motor. It's going to make sure that your power valve stays closed whenever you tighten it. I am doing this off the bike to show it to you easier, and because sometimes I like to keep an extra pre-built cylinder in case I want a new one at the track, even though I'm too slow to need it. Go ahead and grab your gear that you lubed up earlier, and as we said before, it can go on either way. It cannot be put on upside down. Just go ahead and see where the bearing race was riding before and slide it on that direction. Your pivot arm, you're going to make sure that the pin on the arm is faced towards the outside of the cylinder, and then you can't really put it on wrong. It's got two flats on it, so it slides onto the cylinder nicely. And then we're going to go ahead and screw this nut on the top. Use your wrench to hold the one side of the shaft along with a 10mm socket on the other side, and go ahead and torque that down. Make sure that you're holding this arm completely up against the stopper on the cylinder, and as you're holding it onto that stopper, you're also going to hold your power valve closed along with your pivot arm closed. If you're holding all three closed, then you can go ahead and tighten your top clamp. Repeat that process on the other side of the cylinder as well. Now that you have everything tightened, go ahead and grab the pivot arm on your main shaft and move it up and down. Your power valve should open and close at a consistent rate. As long as they are opening and closing at the same rate, all the way closed and all the way open, congratulations, you set your power valve correctly. If it is not set correctly, repeat the process and go ahead and try and tighten down the clamps again. Now, if you're not 100% knowledgeable on how a power valve works, as you see, whenever the power valve is closed, you're closing off the exhaust port, creating more compression inside your cylinder to give you more of a bottom end feel. And as you get closer to the top end, your power valve is going to open to push more air out of your exhaust port. An engine is just like an air pump. The faster you can push air into the motor and the faster you can pull air out of the motor, the more power you can make. So now we can go ahead and grab our HBP cover, use our gasket, and throw that on our cylinder. Remember to anti-seize these bolts before you put them in so they don't get stuck in the future. We're going to leave the second power valve cover off of the cylinder until it's on the engine so that we can attach the power valve arm. We can also now install the coolant nozzle onto the side of the cylinder. Cr125 the Pro Racing has and never will be responsible for anything that you mess up or break during the rebuild of your bike. If you do not feel comfortable with rebuilding your bike on your own, please send it to us or another well-known racing company and they can do a proper rebuild for you. And at this point, congratulations, you have a completely ready to install HPP power valve cylinder on your motor. And again, I'll ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we are going to have more for you soon. Stay slow, YouTube.